Hi everyone, welcome back to Wilde Reads. My name is Dave. This is my August wrap up. Roll the titles. Hi everyone, welcome back. As I said in the intro, this is my August wrap up. Now, I didn't read as much in August as I would have liked, and I certainly didn't read as much as I did in July. I only managed 6 books in August, but there is a reason, and I will explain the reason. The reason is I started BookTube, and so that time that it takes to do BookTube, because it is quite time consuming, but I love doing it. So that time has to come from somewhere, and that time has to come from, or it certainly did in August, it came from reading time. So I'm just going to have to find a new way of scheduling stuff so that I can still read as much as I want to read. So even though I only read 6 books in August, 2 of them were 5 stars and they were absolute belters. So let's get on with the books. Now, the first book I read in August, I don't own it anymore because on our recent trip to Yorkshire we gave it away to Vicky's sister, who is, and I will explain why. I'll explain why we gave it away to Vicky's sister. Vicky's sister is into dogs in a big way. She rescues Romanian dogs and brings them back to the UK. Now, the first book that I read in August was about a dog, and I'll put the cover up here somewhere in either corner, wherever I've got room to put it. And it's called Arthur, and it's published by Two Roads, and it is about a stray dog. Now, the author, Mikael Lindnord, is basically about this Swedish adventure racing team. Now, adventure racing is, I learned through the book, because it takes you in, it's an extreme sport. It's a very, very extreme sport, and they go running, hiking, swimming through the most inhospitable places on the planet. And this particular race that they were taking part in was in the Ecuadorian rainforest. And during the race, they came across a stray dog. Now, Ecuador, in common with a lot of South American countries and in common with a lot of countries, sadly, around the world, has got a huge stray dog problem. So to see stray dogs wandering around, it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's nothing unusual. But this particular dog was quite unusual because it wouldn't leave the team alone, and it stayed with them. So it stayed with them when they ran, it stayed with them when they swam, it stayed with them throughout the entire race. And the guy who wrote the book, who's the captain of this adventure racing team, Mikael Lindnord, he develops a real bond with this dog, and they at the end of the race he's thinking, I've got to take this dog home. You know, we have bonded and I've got to take this dog home. So the book then tells you about the struggle to get the dog a passport, a way of travelling out of Ecuador and back home to Sweden. And the dog's in a terrible mess. It's got deep wounds to its back. It's got no teeth where it's been living rough in a jungle. The dog's very close to death, but he's got this spirit about him that is lovely to read. And I think you will like this book, if you're a dog lover or an animal lover in general, but it's a real good tale about man's bond with animals. So very much enjoyed this book. It was a very, very good tale. The next one I have is a book that has been on my radar for a long, long time. And if you ask Simon from Savage Reads what his favourite book of all time is, he is very likely to tell you that it's this book. This is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Now, I've never read this. I've read Jamaica Inn before a long, long time ago, but I never got round to reading Rebecca. I'm not sure why, really, because it's fantastic. I absolutely loved this book. It's got everything that I like about it. It's a big country house. I love books about country houses. It's a really good book, and I don't know for the life of me why it's taken me so many years to get round to reading it. But I am now a confirmed Daphne du Maurier fan, and Mrs. Danvers has got to be one of the most. She's, you know, when you hear an annoying tune on the radio, it becomes like an earworm. Mrs. Danvers has got to be one of the most villainous characters that I've read. She's just stuck in my head now. So really good book. It will not be the last Daphne du Maurier that I read. In fact, I think I'm going to read all of them now. So really glad that I got round to this. I'm sure many of you have read it on BookTube, and many of the people watching this would have read this. The only slightly annoying thing is, and I don't know whether it was intentional, but you never actually get to know the Christian name of, obviously Rebecca is Max de Winter's first wife, and the story revolves around the housekeeper Mrs. Danvers' obsession with the original Miss de Winter, and our narrator of this book becomes the second Max de Winter, and she feels totally out of place at first. She's not a society girl, let's put it that way, and she gets thrust into this world of posh houses and stately homes and having staff, where at the start of the book she's a lady's companion. I think that's the right expression, a lady's companion they used to call them. So and what you get a real sense of her being thoroughly out of her depth in this book, and there were times in this book where I was absolutely willing her to just stand up to Mrs. Danvers, just stand your ground, and thoroughly enjoyed it. Really good book. So that was the first 5-star read of August. The second 5-star read of August was this book. I don't think I'm running through these in the order I read them, but it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter. So what I read next was, for Cozy Reading Night, Lauren from Lauren and the Books obviously did Cozy Reading Night, or she hosted Cozy Reading Night. There's a video of me doing it on my feed that I'll link down below if you haven't seen it. And I read this. This is The Proof of Love by Catherine Hall. Now this was the first winner of the Green Carnation Prize that Simon Savage of Savage Reads started. And I've seen quite a few people reading this on BookTube, and this concerns a guy called Spencer Little, who's a Cambridge mathematician. So he's studying maths at Cambridge, and something's happened in Cambridge that he wants to escape. So he escapes to I think it's Cumbria, so the Cumbrian countryside, and he stays on a farm with some Cumbrian farmers, and it's a really sensitive book. It's really well written. It's a terrific story, really good read. So that is thoroughly recommended. It's a really good book. Proof of Love by Catherine Hall, published by Portobello, and of course this won the Green Carnation Prize in, I think, 2010. The next book I read is a reread. I've read this book before, but many years ago. It's about 2003 when it came out, and this is Spies by Mikael Frayn. And this won the Whitbread Award, which is of course now the Costa. And this is about two boys in suburban England who become convinced that one of their mothers is working for the Germans. So it's set during wartime England, and one of the boys is convinced that the other boy's mum is well, they both are actually. They're both convinced that the mother is working for the Germans and passing on messages, and they've looked at her diary and they've tried to decode the message. So it's just what this book is really good at is bringing back that time of childhood, and mine was no different, where just when you're free to escape and explore and build camps in the woods, and just, you know, it's like it brings back the innocence of childhood, which is really good. And I think this book now is GCSE text. I think I read that somewhere. So that's Michael Frayn, Spies, published by Faber. And this is a copy that I picked up recently, and I remember reading it. I hadn't been reading literary fiction very long, and I think this is one of the first lit fic books that I ever picked up years ago. So Michael Frayn, Spies, really, really good book. So the next book I read in August is one that's been getting a lot of publicity on BookTube and a lot of buzz on the blogospheres, and a lot of people have read this recently. This is Tin Man by Sarah Winman, published by Tinder Press. This is a fantastic, utterly fantastic book. It's people have called this book perfect, and I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything that beats that. This is a perfect book. So essentially, it's about two boys, Ellis and Mikael, and it's achingly sad. This book, it really is achingly sad, and you might need, or I guarantee you will need, some tissues handy when you're reading this. It's very, very sad in places. It's poignant. It's just a beautifully written book. It's very touching. What it brought back to me is that the scare about the I mean, I'm 44, so when the AIDS crisis first broke in the 80s, it was a very, very scary time, and this book brought back those fears, because at the time, when we were kids growing up with the AIDS crisis, no one knew any information about it, and there was a lot of misinformation, and it was a very, very scary time. So it deals with the AIDS crisis, it deals with love and loss and grief, and it's a fabulous book. It really is a very, very good book. Thoroughly recommended. So that was along with Rebecca, that was my second 5-star read of August. So if you haven't read Tin Man by Sarah Winman, I suggest you go and buy it. It's very, very good. Now the next book I read, and in fact the last book I read in August, because as I said I only read 6 books in August, was a book from my favourite author, and I don't know why I haven't read this before, but it's The Children Act by Ian McEwan. This is about a High Court judge called, I don't know, Fiona. I'm useless at remembering names. So this is about a High Court judge called Fiona May, and it's set against the backdrop of her marriage difficulties, and she has to rule on a Jehovah's Witness boy of 17. He's very nearly 18 in the book, but she has to make the ruling that obviously Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in any blood products and any foreign blood products entering the body, so they're against blood transfusions. And this judge has to rule on the boy who's got leukemia, and he desperately needs a blood transfusion. And without giving too much away, it focuses on that particular case, but it also focuses on Fiona's marriage, and because she's been so career focused, she's not had her own children, and I think there's a sort of aching sense of regret about some of the paths that she's chosen and some of the career paths that have collided with some of her personal ambitions. But again, the reason I read a lot of Ian McEwan is because it's so brilliantly written. Another very, very good book. Just on a side note, Ian McEwan's new book is called Nutshell, and it's so if anyone's read Ian McEwan's new book, would you let me know in the comments below if it's any good? Because it's the actual premise of the story is not one that shouts to me at the moment. So out of all of Ian McEwan's book that I do like to read, I haven't read his latest one. I haven't read Nutshell because the subject matter is something that I'm not that familiar with, and I don't know whether I'd enjoy it or not. So if you've read Ian McEwan's Nutshell, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know your opinions of it. Or if you've read any of the books that I've highlighted today, I'd love to know your opinions on them. What are you reading at the moment? Hello to all the new subscribers. That was my August wrap up. Sorry it was only 6 books, but I'm going to make more time in September, because it is now September. Welcome to the autumn. It's about to get cold and cozy, hopefully. So yeah, hope you're doing all right. Hope you enjoyed the video. I think that's about it from me. And until the next time I see you again, look after yourselves, take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.